being here tonight. My name is Michael Knight. I've been teaching fiction writing at the University of Tennessee for 25 years, during which time I had the tremendous pleasure and privilege of working with this human right here. Do you remember what year it was?
I think it was
2001.
2001 and then fall of 02.
All that is really proving is that I'm an old man.
Not an old man, but
I think this room is full of friends and family of Lily's, but just in case you don't know her well, let me tell you that Lili Vincent has written professionally since 2005 as a technical writer for a Fortune 500 company and as a freelance writer for Knoxville Style magazine. Her debut novel, SeeSaw, which I read with so much pride, taps into her fascination with family, especially mother-daughter relationships. She lives right here in Knoxville, where a lot of the novel is set. She lives with her family, who I think, are they all here?
Yep. All but one sister who's moving a daughter at Old Miss.
I don't think that's a good excuse.
Yeah, I know. I told her.
I mean, her husband could have done it.
I think she bought a book, so that's good.
Oh, all right. We'll let her. Then we don't need her. So here's what we're going to do tonight. Superstar debut novelist Lili Vincent will read to us a little bit from the novel. She and I will chat about the book and writing and whatever else you want to talk about.
Or they want to talk about.
And then we'll turn it over to y'all. Yeah, and let y'all ask whatever questions of Lili that you guys have. So without further ado, do you want
to read the back of the book? Or
you want to read the whole back of the book? Oh, yeah,
you
sure.
need a not galley to do that, yeah.
There we go. All right.
We know where we are.
It says here, author Lili Vincent explores the depth and strength of relationships that transcend distance, space, and time. Her debut novel, a multiple point of view masterpiece, will take you on a captivating journey knit by three women as they face their fears and confront a deception that could break a family for good. SeeSaw invites the reader to ask the questions. Is it okay to lie if lying protects people you love? I have kind of a question about that later in this discussion. How far will a person go to find forgiveness? I should also add that on one of the NetGalley's reviews said it made the UPS man catch her in an ugly cry, which is like the best possible review you could get for a book. Moved to tears in front of the UPS man. Do you want to go and read to us a little bit?
Yeah, that sounds good. So like Michael just said, it's a story told from the perspective of three women. So I'm just going to give you three pieces of each of those women. I'll tell you just for a little bit of backstory, and I talk with my hands, so if I hit this, it's okay. So your POVs, your point of views, are Marie, who is a 23-year-old blind woman in Baltimore. She is very independent and has worked really hard for that independence. And then you have Nina, who is Marie's best friend. So backing up just one step, most of the Marie chapters take place in 2001. And then we're jumping forward in time. No DeLorean necessary, but we're jumping forward in time and you meet Nina, who is Marie's best friend and also sister-in-law. And then the second perspective, and her name is Nina, and Nina is truly carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. And you'll get to see her react to something and sort of see. I often tell my girls we're not, and I have three daughters, but we're not defined by the things that happen to us. We're defined by how we react to the things that happen to us. And so you're going to get to see Nina working her way through something that has happened to her. And then you have Charlotte, who, when you meet her, her chapters take place in 2018 also. And she is at the beginning of the novel, she's a 16-year-old girl who discovers or is diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative eye disease, and she discovers she is going blind in a matter of, it could be anywhere from a couple of months to 18 months. So you're watching her walk through that reality as well. So that's where I felt like you needed a little bit of backstory. And then there's one more character I have to introduce, and it's not weird, but is a location. And you'll find in literature that sometimes the location makes the situation, and so it just makes it possible and makes it special. So Edgevale House is a very old, very big colonial mansion, and it has been subdivided into 7 apartments, and it sits in the middle of Baltimore County in an area called Roland Park, which you're familiar with.
Yeah, for sure.
I would call it like Sequoia, but a little more cramped. Is that
Yeah.
Imagine Sequoia, but a little more tight. And this house is has become the home of 65 and above women with amazing character, and they are just a hoot, and they make this story fun. So we are entering the story in chapter 1, and we're going to jump in where we call these ladies the Ladies of Edgevale, and they have a knit club that meets on Wednesdays, and Walt Maven has stumbled into, and Walt Maven is the main male protagonist in this story, and he has stumbled into residence at Edgevale House by renting an apartment with these older women. So you are meeting them and him on his first afternoon knit club, while the Ladies of Edgevale are, we're going to say, interviewing or getting to know him.
This is one of my favorite scenes.
So here we go. I'm going to try to move this without hitting it, and I'm going to read from here. I'm not going to look at you or picture you in your underwear, I promise. Am I good? Can you hear me? Okay. All right. The only question that caused him to pause was from Evelyn Colgate. "Do you have a sweetheart?" Evelyn asks. Even though I couldn't see them, I felt every single eye looking in our direction. He cleared his throat and I felt him shift where he sat. No. He waited and must have been gathering his thoughts before he went on. For a short time, I was married, but that didn't end well. The bright spots in his voice had gone dull. Before I realized I was doing it, I heard my own voice ask, "What happened?" I clapped my hand over my mouth. "I'm sorry, that's none of my business." My words came out muffled as I spoke through my hand. "It's okay, I don't mind. You caught me off guard, that's all," he said. A low rumble filled the air around us, and I felt the vibration of the old porch through my feet. "Saved by the bell," he said. "Looks like my moving truck is here." "Young man, you will be back soon to finish your story, right?" Evelyn asked, though I heard an instruction more than a question. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "So you're planning on being a regular attendee at Knit Club?" I asked, just above a whisper. "Do you come every week?" he asked. "I do," I said, and smiled and looked in his direction, nervous about how he might react. "You must have a pretty flexible job to get to take off every Wednesday and do something you love." "I do," I said, feeling awkward. Most of my responses sounded like the answers to wedding vows. I was also starting to second-guess my judgment of his opening line about recognizing my voice. "Commercials." "Commercials?" he said. And it was definitely a question. "That's where you've heard my voice before. I produce radio commercials." "Really?" he asked, and he sounded impressed. "Yeah, I have a little studio here at Edgevale House." "That's..." He started, but then stopped. "What?" I was gonna say cool, but it didn't sound big enough. When I said it in my head, I was just trying to think of a better word. "Thanks," I said, blushing at his compliment. "It isn't fancy, but it works." "If it works, that's what matters," he said. And this time, I didn't have to imagine his expression. I could hear his smile. He leaned over, took my needles in one hand and kept them in place, and gently took my other hand in his. He leaned in close and whispered, "You dropped a stitch." Then he guided my fingers to a place in the square I'd been working on, and by feel alone, I knew he was right. "How?" My voice fell away in surprise, completely at a loss for words. He laughed. My mama had 2 boys and insisted we both learn to sew a hem, fix a button, and knit a potholder. I understand the hem and the button, but I'm convinced that the potholder was just to keep us busy and out of trouble during her ladies' meetings. All right, so we're going to jump ahead. Fast forward, jump in your DeLorean, and we are moving 17 years later, and we're jumping to chapter 21. And if you've read a lot, you know that about halfway through the book, which is where this is, something big happens. It keeps you reading. It makes you want to go the distance and stick with the novel. And something big has just happened. I won't spoil it, but you'll know that something big has just happened. We're jumping into Nina's perspective, and we're watching her react to this something big. So I hardly noticed the chill of the late December afternoon as I slipped through the main lobby doors. Susie and I had run this route to and from the hospital so many times that my body shifted into autopilot. I didn't notice as the road transitioned from Blakemore to 31st. I didn't notice as the stone buildings of Vandy slipped past. I crossed street after street without looking once for cars, and I never even slowed down as I made the typically tenuous left onto West End, a busy intersection at any hour of the day. Runners were commonplace on these streets, but not runners in jeans and a t-shirt. To keep people from staring, I picked up the pace. My t-shirt was no match for the chill quickly setting in with the sinking sun. I ran faster as I made the quick half-mile climb to Murphy Road. My lungs were on fire. My cheeks were numb by the time I reached the row of old converted homes that housed various law offices and boutique clothing shops. There was no way I could outrun the hurt that was on the verge of swallowing me whole. The hurt that had nothing to do with physical pain and everything to do with the pain of loss that consumed me. By the time I reached the I-440 bridge, I could no longer feel the tears running down my cheeks and no longer cared as I let gravity and anger carry me down the hill into Sylvan Park. I pushed through the light near Green Hill Church, and finally, as I slipped under the graffiti-covered railroad bridge, I felt the tiniest release in the knot of anxiety in my chest. The shop owner of Ellie Gray's was pulling in clothing racks in preparation to close for the day, and she waved as I passed. The sweet and salty smell of local taco reminded me I hadn't eaten in hours. When I reached the roundabout that joined Murphy, 46th, West Lawn, and the Richland Creek Greenway, the sound of a blaring car horn brought me to an abrupt stop. The car passed so close to me that the air between us pressed me backwards, and the vacuum from it sucked me towards the street. My arms pressed out reflexively, and the toes of my shoes hung on and off of the curb at the same time. I didn't remember passing my turn, but there I was, blocks away, standing in the rush of early evening traffic. Then, through the cold, I heard my name. So we're going to jump a few more chapters forward to chapter 38, and we're going to get to meet Charlie and her spunky crew. At this point, we're calling her Charlotte in the book. We have a little bit of a name change. You meet her at the beginning of the book. And I'll share this in the end, but there's some fun stuff in your books that you'll get to look through. I'll tell you a little bit about it. But Charlotte is really dealing with the discovery of this really big thing. And in the process, as you know, all great teenagers do, they jump in a car and go somewhere crazy. So they have she has embarked on an adventure with 5 of her favorite people. You've got her twin sisters, Leia and Margot and Nora. They are 17, seniors in high school. And 2 of her best guy friends. We've got Andrew and Nathan Walton, and they are respectively 16 and 18 years old. And we've got her best friend, Leia Vandenberg. And just a little piece about Leia is, I've got a lot of my best friends in the audience here, and it's so cool to see their support. So when you read this, there is a piece of each of you in Leia. She talks fast. She's excited. She runs down the stairs like a buffalo, and she is she is the neatest girl, and you will all want to be best friends with her because she's your ride or die best friend. So she's very cool. So I'm going to pick up. They're on their way from Nashville to Baltimore, and so 6 of them in an SUV, and they have found a picture in a box, and they believe that following the footsteps of the people in this picture are going to give them the answers that they are searching for. And so they've stopped at a few places on the road up there, and their last stop before their destination is Pimlico Racetrack, which living in Baltimore, did you ever get to go?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Did you get to go?
I went to the Preakness.
Yeah, Preakness, and so they have this. I won't get into that, but it's a fun place. It's weird and it's cool. But if you've never been, and find yourself in Baltimore, you should go. But that's where they are, and it's not during the Preakness. It's in the winter. So, all right. So here we are, Charlotte. Okay. I looked up at her. Let's do it. Really? Leia said. Yeah, I think it's a good plan, and it might work. I pulled on my coat and my hat and smoothed my hair. Let's do it before I chicken out. It was so much easier than any of us could have imagined. An older man met us just inside the doors. His name was Lionel, and he told us he'd been working at Pimlico since the early 70s. His bushy gray eyebrows rose and fell as I told him our story, leaving out the parts about how my parents had lied about everything and feeling an annoying sense of loyalty to them. Without an explanation, he passed through our group and waved for us to follow him. While he walked, he told us several times, "This ain't something I'm supposed to do, but for you, girl, I'll walk you out myself. It ain't like nothing you've ever seen before. You gotta see it to believe it." And he did. He took us down the ramp to the track entrance, where the winter wind whipped and whistled through empty bleachers. We were able to walk all the way to the fence. "Let me see that picture of yours again. We'll find your spot," he said. I handed him the photo, and he studied it. He turned it sideways and looked at it for another long moment. "Come on," he said, hustling us down the bleachers and following the fence line. He stepped off the end, and I noticed the ground changed from concrete to brick under his feet. "What's this?" I asked. "Winner's circle," he said over his shoulder, not slowing down. This man was easily 80 years old, but was moving like he was much younger. Finally, we stopped, and he held up the picture in front of him, matching the picture with the edge of the brick wall he'd noticed in the corner of the photo. Right here, he said, gesturing with his hand for us to come and stand where he was pointing. "You got your camera?" he asked, holding out his hand. There was nothing rude about him, but I felt unsettled that he was able to know the next moment before the one we'd even gotten through the one we were in. I fumbled in my pockets for my phone, but before I found mine, Andrew handed over his. Leia pulled her Polaroid from her bag. We came together in a row: Nathan, Nora, Margot, Leia, me, and then Andrew on the end. "Say Old Hilltop," he instructed as he snapped pictures with each of the cameras we'd handed him. Then the kind old man escorted us back to the main lobby and told us to come back in May for the Preakness, when we could take the tour. And just as quickly as we'd walked in, we walked out.
Well done, well done. Well done, for real. That line about "I do" and all my answers sounding like wedding vows is one of my favorite lines in the novel. I'm so glad you started with like a sort of sampling of the multiple points of view in the novel. I mean, I think one of its many strengths is the way the different timelines and the three different points of view sort of layers and adds depth to the story. And I wondered if maybe you would start off talking a little bit about how you arrived at that form. Was it always three? No. Talk a little bit about how you got there.
Yeah. So it started as Charlie and Nina, mother-daughter. I'm just fascinated with mother-daughter relationships and how some of them are amazing and some of them are hard and some of them are non-existent. And so I feel like a lot of my writing follows that pattern. But then, and I don't know how you write, but a lot of my epiphanies either come on a long run or in the shower or on the edge of sleep. Right. And so I was standing in the shower one day, and I think I'd actually recently been on a walk with Kirsten. Where are you? Kirsten. She's my Sequoia pal. And we toured Sequoia like multiple times. And I was like, something is not fitting, and all of the betas on the front end were like, it was jumping into the action too quickly.
So had you already written an entire draft by this point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you had it. Okay.
And so at that point, it had been through one round of beta readers, and so that's when you send out your dumpster fire of a manuscript and let people tell you how good or bad it is, and it was pretty bad. There were good bones, but it needed something on either end, and thus Marie's character was born. So we had a lot of reference to Marie, but we never saw her. And the first line of the book is, I can't tell you about all the times I've fallen in love, but I can tell you about the first. And that's the line that popped into my head when I was taking a shower. And I just was like, that's kind of a good one.
It's a good line.
And so I was like, jumped out and got whatever paper I was writing on wet, I'm sure. But and then I sent it to actual beta readers. I sent it to more than a handful of people, and they all loved Marie, loved her. And she only bookended the story. So you had a first chapter from Marie and a last chapter from Marie, and everybody wanted more. They wanted more of her. So I was like, well, I never thought I would even meet this woman in person. So meeting her and getting to explore her life was really cool. And I did that in alternating chapters. So when I counted out the number of chapters I had, it equaled about a year and a half's worth of months, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Give or take a couple. And so I thought, what if I did this and I followed she and Walt's relationship as it grew, and we got snapshots as we watched their love grow. And it was neat to weave in like old information and new information, to have it like her dad makes puzzle boxes, and so they make their way into both sides of the story. And so it was fun to do stuff like that. Lionel is in the old chapters and the new chapters. So that's kind of it was a neat thing to do. It was like Easter eggs a little bit.
Well, and it also, when you bring to life a character who's referenced in the present, like suddenly like we understand the nature of the present better when we have access to the past in that way, don't you think?
Oh,
and
totally.
Also Pluto's back there. Pluto is one of my favorite, sort of secondary characters. You're looking around like Pluto might be in the room.
He is.
Is Pluto in the room?
Is. Pluto, would you like to raise your hand? You don't have to. It is.
Pluto, you were my favorite. There's a great scene where Pluto teaches young Marie, or they start talking about learning how to play the piano, and it's really one of my favorite scenes. He treats her in such an adult way, I love that scene.
And his real name is Larry.
Hi, Larry.
And Larry, his dear wife Anne, could not be with us today, but she's also Evelyn Colgate. So you have Pluto and Evelyn Colgate. So yeah, special.
That's lovely. So that once makes me want to ask a question about writing autobiographical fiction. But first, I want to ask about, when you were introducing the book, you talked about the importance of location, and you referenced specifically Edgevale House. Yeah. And I think, like it's one of the pleasures as a reader, and everyone in this room can relate. You're reading along, and suddenly you turn the page, and there's a very recognizable Sequoia Hills, and you feel at home in the novel. This is kind of a general, vague question, but talk a little bit about the importance of sense of place in this novel, or in the novels that you love to read. Like how sense of place operates as a part of your storytelling.
I feel like it's like when you have this may be a girl reference, but when you
I live in a house full of them.
you do.
Yeah,
You have
I
his
do.
two daughters. When you have been in the summer, right, and you come back to the winter and you start hearing Rocky Top on the radio, and you are starting to pull out your orange, and you see your Uggs that you have retired,
Sure.
and you slide them on, and you're like, oh man, I love you, Uggs, and I will wear you as much as I can for as late into the spring as I can. It's cozy. And I feel like when you read somewhere that you've been, you're like, I know that place. And so my hope is that when people read it, this is one of the Lindas right here, and you get to feel like you have a piece of that place.
Yeah.
Like it was written specifically for you. And there are several lines that some dear friends of mine, like, I was like, I'm putting that in a book someday, just so that you know. There's a line, my friend Robin, when we go out, we're in this group of ladies that lunch, I think they're here somewhere, and they, whenever we go out west, Robin, she's like, fine, I'll join you in 379 too far, that's fine. So that's in there. And I feel like you're giving gifts to your readers because they will personalize that.
Well, I totally agree, but I also think, one of the pleasures of reading this novel and reading lots of novels is being transported to a place that you don't know. I know Baltimore because I taught there for a little while, and I've lived in Knoxville for a long time, but, Edgevale House is not necessarily every single person's experience growing up in a situation like that. But I felt transported into that world, and should I just put a question mark at the end of that sentence?
Yeah,
world.
Yeah.
Is that world?
Well,
I can't get the question mark to come out.
Edgevale is a real place. It does exist. It does sit on 201 Edgevale. There aren't over 65s living there. There's, for the most part, residents, which is why we were in Baltimore. So but it's a real place, and so I want people to. Edgevale's kind of an oasis, and it's a special place, and I want people to know that places like that do exist, and that they capture a piece of you once you go there. And that's one of the cool parts about Edgevale is that, the people that interact with it, they leave a piece of themselves there.
So, gosh, I have a lot of questions, and we only have limited time, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to manage this. So that makes me think of another thing, and I've said this to you already, but maybe I can say it to the audience. I said it to you when we met on Zoom the other day, but one of the things that I love about this novel is that, with maybe one notable exception, it is populated by decent human beings. You know what I mean? Kind human beings, which I think is ever more rare in fiction. I guess maybe the question is that important to you? But so I should also say they make mistakes. You know what I mean? They screw up. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a novel if they were perfect. So talk about like the trickiness of, I guess, maybe generating tension with really decent people, and because decent people are trying hard to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And then also about like how difficult it is to have characters that you love, and clearly you love these characters, commit acts and do things that they shouldn't do. Make mistakes.
Well, when I was a little girl, my siblings told me that I was adopted. And so I've been fascinated with children that were adopted secretly. But I think that, not to dive into a realm that makes anyone comfortable or uncomfortable, but I feel like we're all broken.
Sure. We're
all flawed. We all fall short. And the more that we live in an Instagram perfect world, it's sometimes hard to see yourself in the people that you follow. Mm-hmm. And so it really is a joy to write about the brokenness, because it makes it feel less uncomfortable when you encounter it.
It's true.
Truly, there was a time not long ago where it was not okay for a blind person to function in society. Mm-hmm. And my mother, the back of the book has a letter from me written directly to each of you, as personal as that can be. But my mom was diagnosed with juvenile open-angle glaucoma when she was 4 and was completely blind by 7 years old. And the world that she lived in was not made for her, and it wasn't safe for her. And so we've come a long way. But I think it's important to write about the brokenness and write about the ugly, because I think if we don't, we're doing the historical record of what we're leaving, which is what writing is. We're doing a disservice for recording that inaccurately.
Maybe you'll have something to say about this, maybe not, but don't you think, at least I as a reader tend to sympathize with characters more if they are flawed and broken? I mean, maybe that's just because I'm such a colossal fuck up. Well, sorry, I just said that out loud.
Even Nancy Lynn, who is the villain, is...
Yeah, I agree.
Have you read?
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, man, she's awful.
Yeah, you hate her, but...
And she's bad, like really bad. And yet, you want to figure out two things. Why is she so broken, and how can you fix her?
Yeah, I agree. Do we want to go further down that path? I mean, maybe let's do something more fun. Okay. We'll talk about something more fun. So way back in the day when you were in my class,
oh goodness,
way back in the day, and it's been a long time. So, but
you've seen her recently.
Nancy Lynn?
No. Oh, I thought you were going to the author.
Oh no.
That's where you're going.
You can go there if you want to. But so when you were in my class, one of the things I really do remember about you, and I really do remember, it's not every student that I remember 20 years after the fact. I usually give it's a 5-year window. If after 5 years, I don't feel guilty if you're out of my brain. But you were very serious about writing then. I mean, you were serious about writing well. Yes. But you were also very interested in the business side of things and like how the industry worked and how to get published. And, I was saying to some lovely person that I spoke to earlier, one of the amazing things about seeing this book come out is that you've stuck with it, all this time. And will you just sort of, you can tell the story if you want to tell it, or you can just talk us a little bit through the process of how you went from Lili Vincent, aspiring creative writing student, to first novel.
Yeah. Okay. So, my best friend from college, Stephanie, are you in here? Where are you? Is she here? They may have had to slip out. She ran a marathon when we were in college, and I thought to myself, I went and supported her, and I thought to myself, I can do that. I could totally do that. And we had our crew coach there, and I was standing beside him when I said this, and he said, "There's no way you can do that." And my husband will tell you that's kindling on a fire. That's like a squirting lighter fluid.
Lighter fluid, sure.
Yeah, that's a fire starter for me. So I think, was it senior year? I guess junior, senior year.
It wasn't my senior year. My senior year was way before that.
May have been my senior year, but we went to a reading. We were invited to a reading for extra credit, and it was an author. Her name is
Antonia Nelson.
Yeah, Antonia Nelson.
You can all learn to not like her anymore after you hear this story.
It's okay.
You don't have
She's
to.
flawed. She's flawed.
She's flawed and human like the rest of us.
So she does this reading, and her books are good. They're sassy and good, and very introspective. And I'm this green creative writing student, and I asked her. I was the one that raised my hand. And any questions? And
you were the first one up. I mean, I remember there was your hand.
I want to know, how do you get published? That's what I asked her. How do you get published? And she looked down for me. I don't even know if it was a podium, but in my mind, it was like a podium, and she was looking down.
12 feet high.
Yeah. And she said, "You write something really good." So I did.
There you go. Smell it, Antonia Nelson.
You just send her a copy. Do you ever? Anyway.
We should.
So I feel like telling me no, first of all, is not a good idea. And then, gosh, you get here from your community. I mean, you know this. Your wife now designs your book covers because no one on earth could do it as good as her.
That's right.
You find your village, and and they build you up. My husband has fixed every computer problem I've ever had, even if that is me breaking my laptop and him buying me a new one because we can't figure out how to fix the one that's broken. So I think you are the response to your experience. And so, I think a lot of that is. And then my mom passed away 8 years ago. And it was really important for me to record her story in some way and honor her in some way. I hate that she's not here to see it. I know she sees it, but I wanted to make sure she got a little bit of herself told.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure she's. I mean, she must be like exploding with pride, right?
Oh, I'm sure she's telling everybody.
Telling everybody in heaven. So hey, it's about time to turn it over to these folks. Can I ask one follow-up question to that? Because I think this, this story, to me at least, is exciting and inspirational. So you told us this sort of philosophical way you went from creative writing student to debut novelist, but like practically speaking, you know what I mean? Like, have you been writing all this time? Did you take some time off and then come back?
So I wrote professionally.
You also homeschooled your children, right?
2 of them I am right now.
How did you get any writing done at all?
I don't even know. Our house has a lot of dog fur around. I don't clean, and he cooks for the most part. But so practically speaking, writing is like a muscle. You have to flex it. You have to write regularly, otherwise you get rusty. And so while he was in medical school, I kept a blog. It still exists out there somewhere. I traveled for work, so as a training and development specialist for AutoZone. And so the short of it is I got to go do people's jobs for a week or 2 at a time, and I learned how to be a maintenance manager. I learned how to change batteries. I learned how to do all kinds of really crazy stuff. So I could then go back and write best practices and help them do their job better and more efficiently and find good things that were happening throughout the organization and standardize them. And so I wrote professionally, and then I kept this blog with all the funny travel stories, because you travel, and there are some. I once walked through an airport where there was 2 men handcuffed to a briefcase. What is that story? Like, really? And so I was like, I got to start writing this stuff down. And so I created a blog and wrote a lot of those funny stories down. And so that was kind of how I was flexing that muscle back then. And then when we moved to Baltimore for his residency program, I worked for a little while and then started having babies. And when they're little, you have way more time to write.
It's true.
Yeah, and
teenagers are the big problem.
Yeah, they make you drive a lot. And so anyway, practically speaking, so now I just fit it into the gaps. I wake up early, I go to bed late. If there are teenagers in Virginia that just will not get back in the car, I sometimes have to stay up all night in order to get their butts back in the car. But they really do take up residence in your brain. I can remember talking to Jeremy about these teenagers in Virginia, and he's like, who the heck do we know in Virginia? And I'm like, you know them. And he's like, oh, these are story people again. And so yeah, it's and your family has to they have to
you got to get on board.
Yeah, and there's some level of crazy but it's the crazy becomes really fun at the end when you get a review that says, I cried in front of the UPS man.
Ugly cried in front of the UPS man. That's awesome.
So,
Does
that answer?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely, absolutely. So, and these people have come all this way, and I'm sure they have questions. Somebody put their hand in the air and ask our debut novelist a question.
First of all, who's read the story? Okay, so a handful of okay, cool. So there's some people. Any questions?
There's one right there.
Yeah.
Tell us about the name.
So remember, I explained in the beginning we were in the present is where in the past is where the novel starts, and in the present is where it alternates back and front, or current day, I guess is a better way to say it. So we see things and then we saw things in the past, but also Marie saw things in the past, and now she doesn't see things anymore, and Charlie is seeing things currently, and she'll have to use what she saw in the past. My girls think it would be really fun if I wrote the first 4 or 5 books and just called them playground equipment, which is, you got slide and merry-go-round and swing. So we'll see.
I think merry-go-round should be the next novel. Yeah.
So maybe that might. That was her idea.
There were a couple hands over in this general area. Did I hallucinate those hands?
Come on, somebody. Yes. You do it.
I was curious, when you write something and you think you got something good, how do you get published? does that happen?
You write something really good. No. Like I said before, your first draft is always a dumpster fire. Would you agree?
Yes.
I mean, there's a few exceptions, but even Stephen King says the first draft is a dumpster fire. And you have to be okay with sitting in the suck and letting someone else see it. I think when you and I talked, you had just recently written something and sent it out to have a couple people glance over it.
Who do you send it to?
I send it to her. But you find someone that you trust in two ways. One that will be gentle and kind, but also brutally honest and tell you where the gold is and where it's just coal.
Does somebody know something about novels per se, or just a friend?
I think just an avid reader, really. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I also think the longer you're doing this, the more people you know who are writers and who've had some success in the field, and the more connections you'll make in that world, and you'll be able to send it to those people too.
Yeah,
You know?
he might be able to. Yeah, that's.
But I think, you know, I'm the same way. My wife is the first beta reader, and she often says, yeah, no.
Try again.
But then, you know, I've got writer friends who I trust, who I can fall back on, and you know, I know their goal is to help me make good fiction, not to make a fool of me. You know,
You'd much rather it get burned before it goes to the world than after.
Absolutely.
So then once you get a favorable, even if you have to redo it,
Yeah.
now it's more favorable,
Mhm.
then where does it go?
Well, there's a few options. Nowadays, it's a little easier. I'd say probably 20, 25 years ago, it was a lot harder. The old path is find an agent, let the agent critique it and rewrite it, and then the agent, when it's ready and you agree it's ready, you send it to, you go on submission, which means you're sending it to publishing houses. So your agent was really the gatekeeper. Now the model is shifting because you know more about the industry than I do. What I know about the industry is there are 5 big publishing houses that control a lot. And so a lot of people got a little sad about that and started making some changes. And so it's a little easier now to self-publish or hybrid publish. The model that I followed in this situation is hybrid publishing. So I don't have an agent, but I do have a publisher. And she's very supportive and kind of plays that role of both. So, and then you can just straight up self-publish. Anybody can self-publish anything these days. And Amazon makes that easy. Union Avenue is here, and so we want to support. I would love to support local as much as possible. But if you have and the other piece of it is you got to be willing to hustle. Like getting this many people here in a space to support you when you have no track record for awesomeness other than creating really beautiful little people is it says a lot about you all for being willing to support me, having never read a word I've written. But it also says something about me that I'm willing to ask. And so I think that your hustle has a lot to do with it too. A lot of self-published authors sell less than, and hybrid published authors sell less than 100 books. That's the stat. And so you have to be willing to hustle.
So your book has a cover, and there's somebody reviewed the back. Who are the reviewers on the back?
There's no reviews on the back. That's just the back of the book synopsis.
Oh.
But you go through a company called, I went through a company called NetGalley to get some advanced praise so that it could kind of get some traction in the literary world. But yeah.
Well, who wrote the part where you cried in front of the
Someone on NetGalley.
Yeah, someone
It's
on
like an
NetGalley.
online
Yeah.
reviewing, so any reader can go
Yeah.
and look. So
Yeah.
you could post, and you should.
Yeah,
Post
that's
a review on
currency.
NetGalley.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but thank you so much.
There was one in the back in that direction, past Mike. There's one over there. One over here.
Please.
So it's me, your sister.
Mhm.
So that's what I was going to ask is what can we all do now to help support you?
Nice segue.
That's a good question.
Nice
No one's
segue.
ever asked me such a nice question.
Okay. So there are two bits of currency. Well, I mean, there's more than two in the literary world, but the biggest one is reviews. That is the biggest thing that you can do is when the book goes live tomorrow, because the release date is tomorrow, read as fast as your little feet can carry you, and then get on Amazon and review. the more reviews you have, the more weighted your book is on Amazon, and it will pop up to the charts. I don't know much about indie charts. I do know you may be able to speak to that a little bit. I'm pointing to Union Avenue back here. But I know that independent bookstores carry more weight in the literary world also. So the fact that you've purchased through an independent bookstore that's got their roots deep in Knoxville, it actually weighs heavily, or more heavily on the lists.
I'm not here to critique your grammar. You will not be
So
graded at the end of this
in
evening.
short, the way that I understand it is, if I sell you a copy of the book, like I buy a bunch of author copies and I sell you a copy of the book, that's 0 points. If you buy a book from Amazon or Barnes and Noble, that counts as 1 point. It's not real points, but this is just an analogy. But if you support a local bookstore, that counts for 2. So it's almost, if not more, double your support for the author, because not only are you supporting a local business who's really pushing reading and the literary world and supporting authors like us, you are also supporting that author in a way that your vote counts bigger. So,
and local bookstores, I'll just add quickly, are also fantastic about word of mouth, talking to their customers
Yes.
about what's doing well and putting books in customers' hands and talking to each other. So Union Ave Books might say that we were talking about Jackson, Mississippi, Lemuria Books, when they see each other at the SEBA conference. Oh my God, this book is selling like hotcakes in Knoxville. You need to check it out. So they're great at talking to each other. And I've seen books go from nowhere, like they weren't selling the copies, to being maybe not the New York Times bestseller list, but like a regional bestseller list,
and
just because of
indie
independent bookstores.
Indie
Yeah,
bookstore bestseller
absolutely.
list. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So-
and yeah, so
the review is big. Do you guys have a review section on your website?
I don't know,
We'll get back to you on that.
but I do know that we personally use this thing called indie bestsellers.
Mhm.
I have as soon as you pointed it out, I'm texting my people. And I'm like, hey, how do they get onto the indie bestsellers?
Yeah.
But we use the indie bestsellers for our bestsellers list and all that.
And that's nationwide. So every independent bookstore has access to that. So the more they get to carry the weight of the selling, and that was the really fun part about partnering with Union Ave on this, is that I have so much history here, and so it's fun to really support them. So
So would you prefer a review on indie bestsellers or Amazon? Or
all of the above.
And all you have to do is cut and paste. It's super easy. So good. So that where do you look for reviews? If you buy on Amazon, you look on Amazon. If you buy locally, then you go to Goodreads. And so those two places. So Goodreads is a huge, there are some people who base their entire reading selection on what Goodreads recommends. If you're in a book club, there's an awesome website called Book Clubs. It's great for organizing, and they have questions for your book club, and so there's a few really great sites that have really grown from grassroots for readers. So and then the other thing you can do for me is post pictures of you and your book. You go to the beach, take my book. Go to the New York City, take my book. When people see, and the neat, do you have it?
What do you need? This one?
Cool thing is, I love jacketed hardcovers. They're so fancy, but they get torn up.
Look.
So inside your book, it's case laminate. So you can leave this at home. And this is what we call a petite profile. So it's little, and it's the same size as the paperback, so you can toss it in your bag. But yeah, I tried to think of y'all when I was doing this. And that's the fun part about hybrid publishing is, I don't know, did Lauren come tonight? Lauren Balmer designed my cover. I put that on upside down.
I noticed.
So my good friend Lauren designed this book cover, and if you look really closely, there's actually a knit pattern on the back of the book. So that's what that is, and
There's an
and if you
eye.
open it up wide like this, it's an eye. And my girls picked the cover color because they all love blue. It's the only thing they agree on. So anyway,
You don't have to fix it. I can fix it when I get home.
it's okay.
There was one hand in the back here or there's one over there too.
Okay.
Do you have a hand? Go ahead.
Two questions. This big for both of y'all. When y'all are writing, how do y'all so you got the idea from or describe characters and bullet points?
I don't know how you do it.
You go first.
I'm what the literary calls a pantser. So I write by the seat of my pants. So I basically know the beginning, middle, and end before I start. And I kid you not, I promise I do this. This is not just, I actually write journal entries from my characters' perspectives, or I write letters from one character to the next. I'll tell a story on my high school best friends are here, and they drove all the way from Memphis. And Heather, where are you? Is she here? She may be somewhere. Anyway, so we wrote notes back and forth to each other in high school, and they just became all of these notes, and we were having to keep up with them, and we ended up having a book. We were like, let's get a book instead, and so we got these little journals, and we had each other's locker combinations, and so we'd write our letter in the book, close it up, stick it in our locker. So we wrote it back and forth. So Leia and Charlotte, or Leia and Charlie, have a book that they pass back and forth, and they have been doing it for many years. And we taped our prom pictures and our ticket stubs in it, and like really, I mean, just their memory books. So I sort of do that with my characters. So I wrote. They never saw the light of day, but I wrote the book pages, the letters back and forth between Charlotte and her best friend. So that's kind of how I get to know my characters. And that's a lot of extra work, but I really feel like it allows me to really get to know their heart and kind of where their motivation is. So that's kind of how I start.
That makes me want to ask you a question, so I'll ask it in 1 second. But I too am a pantser, because
We don't take off our pants and run anywhere.
Well, speak for yourself. I think a weird thing, like there are tons of good writers who outline and who know exactly what the chapter is going to be.
It's a gift.
Yeah. But I've tried it, but what happens is like it turns off my subconscious. You know, I'm not discovering the story as I tell the story, so it's not exciting for me to write. Whereas if you don't know where you're going, it's thrilling. You know, you're like, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow?
I can remember telling him, like, I come in and I'm like, I met this person, and he's like, oh God, these story people again. And I mean, it's fun. Like when characters pop up and you didn't even know. Like, for example, it used to like the original Walton brothers, Andrew and Nathan Walton. It was originally just one, and then all of a sudden he had a brother, and I was like, this is so cool. Like, so it is fun. You're like, really, what's around the next corner?
Yeah,
so it's a little bit crazy, but it's a lot fun.
How do you control that craziness so you kind of keep it under wraps so that you're kind of controlling the narrative of the story? What
You
you're trying
don't.
to accomplish?
I don't.
Me either. I mean, that's part of the fun. And, you have to get used to throwing stuff away, like writing a chapter that's just, like you were talking about, you wrote all those sections of the book and then you just didn't use them. When you have to get used to sort of going down a blind alley, knowing that there might not be anything fruitful down there, but that you'll learn something about the story as you go down that alley, and that'll help you later. So, I would bet for every, 100,000 words I write to make a novel,
250.
I was about to say, I write 300,000 words or 500,000 words to get those 100,000 words that are actually the novel at the end of the day. Don't you feel the
I
same?
agree, and your wife helps me kill my darlings. Stephen King says that.
Stephen King stole that from William Faulkner. I just want to be clear that the South
William
can
Faulkner
claim that line.
said you have to be
murder
okay.
your darlings.
You have to murder your darlings, but they don't ever go away. They actually, I have a reject pile, and so they may surface somewhere else. Because I don't ever throw it away.
So I want to ask a question myself, if that's all right. Yeah. Pardon me, crowd. So you said something just then, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it made me think that you were working on something else. Oh. I wonder, this is maybe a terrible question, maybe an exciting question, but are you, this novel, we're celebrating this, we're going to keep celebrating this, we're going to read it and we're going to love it, but is there something else in the works?
There is. So I'm about 30,000 words in, which is, how much would you say is 30,000?
How many pages is 30,000 words?
I mean, it's like
it's about 100 pages, maybe.
Yeah.
So give or take.
Yeah. Ish. Yeah, it's 100. I mean, this is what 280.
Let's look.
310 something. I don't know. So yeah, 30,000 in. Not a sequel, but the same world. And there is one character, we'd call her best supporting actress. Her name is Susie Vandenberg, and there is a lot of Kirsten Kropelak who's in this room, and there's a lot of Nancy Schul in Susie Vandenberg. You will love her. She has an apron that says "Kiss the Cook." It's pretty cool. And a pantry door that says "Pantry." We like labels. Kirsten likes labels. And so I was so excited when she appeared in the first chapter. She's there. So we call this, what do you call it? When you, same world, different people?
I don't know what the official term for that is. What is
it's
it?
there- I
The
mean,
this is the Lili Vincent universe.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Marvel has
So,
one, you
yeah,
get one.
Same world, but different characters. So you've got cameos, and there's a couple of appearances from characters in this book. So you get to see how they're doing a few years later. But totally different story. But yeah, so yeah, there's something new.
There's one.
You.
No, you talked about how you wanted to highlight your mom in the book.
Yeah.
Is there a character that is highlighting you at all?
Good question.
Man, Christina.
Good question.
Okay.
Sorry, without
No,
giving away.
no, it's a great question. We had a conversation about this, I think. I think one of the most common questions I get is this autobiographical? Yes and no. A good creative writing teacher will tell you to write what you know. And so that's what I did. Blindness and visual impairment has been a part of my world since I was born. My mother was totally blind. My dad is visually impaired. And they set up our world in Memphis in a way that we could walk to everything, which is really rare. Deanna, are you in here somewhere? Deanna's somewhere. I keep calling for people. When I reached out to Deanna when we were looking for a house, I said, is there a place in Knoxville where I can just walk to everything? And there isn't. Nothing like that exists here. But Memphis does. It still has an area, even now, that's a walking community. And I think that's such a cool thing. But I think, what did you ask me again? I got sideways.
It was her. She
What did
asked.
you- oh,
is
my
there
mother.
a character based
yes,
on
it
you?
is. Okay, so in Memphis, when I grew up, yeah, I'm there. Welcome to life with me. A lot of Charlotte is me as a child, but not exactly. But I can tell you very specifically, and you learned this really early on, she has not had the greatest road. Is it okay to share specifically?
You can. This is your special show.
So I was in the world of special education, in the education system. There is something called an IEP, and it's called an individualized education program. And when you hit 5th grade, you are invited to come to those meetings. And I remember, and this is in the novel, I remember distinctly sitting outside after I was dismissed from that meeting and hearing my teacher say, having a blind student in my class is a waste of time and resources, and it puts everyone in my class at a disadvantage because I have to cater to her. And as a mom with a daughter who is visually impaired, I want to make the world a better place for her. I feel like every question I'm getting really profound and emotional.
You're feeling it, man. You're feeling it.
But I want to make this world better for her, and writing that truth allows the world to recognize that the sensitivity to what the disabled community goes through is profound. And so there's a lot of young me in Charlotte, and there's a lot of struggle in Charlotte. There's a lot of overwhelmed mom in Nina that many of you have experienced. No matter what we do, something will go wrong, and something will go awry, and something will be a mess. And Marie is kind of the person I want to be. She is just so positive and so good. And that was hard. You asked me a question earlier about writing these characters. And when I added chapters to Marie, I had to really walk that line because she had to be pretty damn near perfect. And that was hard, because when you see someone raw, I mean, you even see her insecurity, but you still love her. You see her in moments, you know, as she falls in love. You watch her become a mother. You watch her find her first best friend. And so there's a lot of me in that too. My best friend from high school is here. My very first best friend is here, and that's Heather Richardson. And she had the spunk to not care that there was this weird girl and that she was fun to be around. And so she scooped me up and made me her best friend. And I think there's a little bit of me in all of them. Great question. I'll
What
bring you
else?
chocolate next time we're at swim practice.
We're holding you to that.
Okay.
I think it's almost closing in on 8. Do you
Oh,
want to do
goodness.
one more question?
Yeah.
Or what time do you have on that magical time-telling device that you have on your wrist there?
4 minutes.
7:56. We have 4 minutes. We do one more. I'll ask it if nobody wants to ask it, but this is your special chance to ask Lili a question.
When does the Audible come out?
Tomorrow. All formats are out tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
And the narrator is freaking amazing. Just amazing.
You were saying that
No, she lives in Seattle. She's amazing, though. She's great. She makes people ugly cry.
All right, here's my question, and I'm pretty sure I asked you this in my class. We're going to bring it full circle time-wise. Sometimes, if I didn't do this, forgive me, but sometimes in my class as an icebreaker, I ask all the students on their first day of class, if you could have written any book in the world other than your own, what book would it be?
Oh, man, you didn't even preface this one in advance. I
Uh,
didn't
well,
even get some homework.
I don't telegraph. I've got like 12 more questions here if you want to go on. I mean, we could go really deep.
Okay. I don't know if you've heard of this one. It's Mr. and Mrs. Bojo Jones by Anne Head. You know her?
Yeah, but I think you told me about this book. Yeah.
It's really the book that made me want to be a writer. It was the first book that I read that wasn't neat. It's a little gritty. If we're talking like really famous fiction, it'd probably be To Kill a Mockingbird. And if we're talking about modern fiction, anything by Emily Gifford.
You're already cheating.
I know.
You get to pick one.
Okay, fine.
It's Bojo Jones.
Bojo
Mr.
Jones.
and Mrs.
Yeah,
Bojo Jones.
Yeah, knee jerk. Yeah, Bojo Jones.
Thank you very much for including me in this and for having all these
Thanks for
lovely
being
people
here.
here. And yeah, thank you.